to welcome Marissa. So glad to have you on the program today. If you wouldn't mind just starting off by giving the audience an introduction and background on yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. So Marissa Fayer, I am a 20 plus year, I don't like to name it, medical device executive. And I've been focused a lot in the imaging space, mergers and acquisitions, women's health, before it was even popular, quite honestly. So 20 years in women's health already, and especially on the digital health tech side of things. It's really exciting, but I'm the CEO of Deeplook Medical, and we are a software technology company where we focus on imaging, radiology, and we have our first flagship product, which is DL Precise, which is already FDA cleared.
Awesome.
And commercializing. Yay.
Congratulations.
You always get a clearance, but you sometimes you don't commercialize. So that's the exciting part.
No, congratulations on that. And on the topic of, bridging that data gap and the digital divide, I kind of wanted to get your opinion on, how can we address the data gap in AI to ensure that machine learning models have access, to not only diverse, but also representative data sets?
I mean, I know it sounds easy, but just ask for it, demand it, require it, write it into your studies, write it into your trials, write it into everything that you're doing, especially when we talk about AI and machine learning. The data is there. There is exactly what was just said by Organon and so many other speakers, and I know it will continue to be said, especially for the therapeutic side, there is not enough data. But when it comes to AI and building new models, there is a lot of data out there, most especially in the mammography space, when you're speaking about breasts, because that is the only annual imaging screening that happens on a regular basis. So that data is there. So it sounds really simple and basic, but ask for it to be part of the work and the trials that you do. And sometimes it might come at a little bit more of a cost. It shouldn't, especially when it comes to data. But when we're looking at other like drug trials and things like that, you're looking for a different diverse set. When it comes to data on a man, data on a woman, I mean, it's the same cost of data. So just ask for it. And it's not just including women. It's including people of color, people in non-urban settings, not on the coasts. There's a lot of work that's done on the East Coast and the West Coast, and sometimes we forget about the entire rest of the country that's also incredibly diverse. In order to feed AI and machine learning models, you have to feed it data. And that data needs to be diverse and representative of the entire swath of the human planet. And it can't just be white men. Or even white women. It has to include all types of people, and you as a person and as a company need to specify that. There is some legislation coming down from the FDA as well that is going to require it. So, that's I think what you just need to do.
Yeah,
Again, sounds a little naive, but
just ask, right? I mean, there's no harm in just asking, putting that out there. I mean, that's the least we can do at the end of the day.
Yeah, and find some of your, like if you're working with the CRO, tell them that's what you want. And don't go with a CRO if they're not willing to do that work for you, or or a research organization that's you're buying your data from, or you're partnering with. Tell them that's what you want, and also go to other more diverse areas. Go to a learning institute that's potentially in a different area.
Right. Yeah, no, there's, so many different ways to be able to kind of reach out and be able to, kind of request and almost demand that diversity and more representative data sets. And talking about when we're getting into AI, more specifically in the healthcare space, do you have an opinion on how we can more establish transparency and trust in the data sources and models, especially considering some concerns that physicians may have about the data they are actually relying on in terms of the AI?
Yeah, so physicians have always been the source of truth, and they continue to be, and they have every right to question this. So, I want to also put that out there that everything should be questioned. It shouldn't be just a black box that everyone just assumes is good. So, they're also protecting their reputations, because most of the time, a lot of this AI machine learning is not yet at the decision support or actually making decisions for the physician. So they have every right to ask all of these questions. I think the best thing to kind of establish transparency and trust with them is to make them understand the basis of your model, understand the basis of your application, the work that you're doing, how you taught it, how you fed it, make them and understand where the data has come from so that they see it, what was fed into it, and that, you have the gravitas behind you as well. One of the other things that's really important and something that we focus on at Deeplook is making sure that it's based in fact. And it's not just learning to start. So with fixed deterministic code that isn't learning, it's not changing, and it should be the base and the model for then learning on top of. So it's code, it's lines of code like we've been using for 20 years. It's what computers are built on, and things like that. It's fixed. It hasn't been learning. When it's fixed and you're going to get the same outcome every time, no matter what, then you can layer on AI. Then you can layer on machine learning because you have a basis of truth. And I think that's a really important model to make sure that physicians have trust. And listen, adoption of technology in healthcare is really hard. So let's start with basis of truth. Let's start with things that are fixed and take baby steps to get there. And then when you have that truth, learn from that. And that's the way that trust gets enabled, especially in the physician community.
No, I love that, especially, bringing it down to those terms where the data itself has to be accurate. It has to be truthful. And if you're building AI on top of, a bad or biased data set, then you're not really learning and not really using that technology to its full potential. And kind of on that topic, so what do you think are the potential risks and challenges associated with using machine learning if the data set is bad or biased? And how do you think these issues can be mitigated besides just building it based off truth?
Yeah, you have to be very specific on what you're feeding it. And I think garbage in, garbage out. And, we're living by the model of, you have fixed truth and known, what we're doing is we're making sure that we have known malignancies that are loaded in the system, known benign, known biopsied, it's truth. So it's not just based on code, it's based on the information that you're feeding it. It is verified independently before you even get it so that you're feeding in the right information. The risks are, you feed it bad data, you're going to get bad data out, or it's learning something, inappropriate or incorrect. And it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge why machine learning, especially, in the last 6 months is getting a little bit of backlash for the sole reason of nobody knows where that data set is coming from. So again, like I've said before, if you point to loading it with, diversity, loading it with known truth, loading it with the right information, then the risks and the challenges kind of go away, provided that you have obviously a really good, robust model. And when you put in biased information, you're only going to get results for a small population that's not going to serve everybody else. And it's not equitable because you need to serve everybody with these solutions. And that's one of the points of AI and machine learning is that it kind of democratizes and makes the technology a lot more equitable, but it has to be with the right inputs. And I think that that's where the biggest challenges come from. I think one of the biggest challenges, honestly, is getting the data, is getting the correct data to feed in. And this is where universities and learning institutions really need to help companies, and especially small companies, to get this. When we're talking about, the Organons and the GEs and things like that, they have the capital to be able to spend a ton of money for these learning models and for these diverse sets. But it needs to be accessible for the smaller companies as well, because we're all going to be their acquisitions. When in the long run, most of us, the good ones, are going to be acquired and integrated into these larger platforms. And that's, a lot of the play for these AI machine learning companies. And so making sure that we have access to a lot of this information at a correct price point as well. And it's a really big challenge for AI and machine learning companies right now, especially in healthcare.
That's very interesting to know that, it can sometimes be hard to get access to that, truthful data set to begin with. And so especially when we're talking about, layering machine learning and AI on top of a fixed data set, which can ultimately enhance physician confidence and provide more reliable results. But how do you think it can enhance that physician confidence, especially compared to solely relying on original data sets, for example?
Yeah, it makes it trustworthy. So, physicians put their they put their reputation, they put their medical license at risk every time they make a decision. And so, normally they rely on their brain. And that's their biggest tool, and in research capacity. But AI machine learning is allowing them to make different and better decisions, or confirming what they think as well. And so making sure that they have the trust in the data, a trust in the information, that's helpful, because then they're going to adopt it. Then they're going to push it out. Then they're going to, tell their friends about it. Then they're going to, go to a medical, college or community and conference, and they're going to talk about it, and they're going to stand up for it. And that's how technology gets adopted. And so, they're using this information to oftentimes not have somebody else make a decision for them. We're not there yet, especially in healthcare. And I actually don't think that we should be yet, because it's relatively new and everything's still learning. So we need to get to a point where they're just validating their thoughts, and then it gets adopted, and then we go into a different modality, and then you keep layering on top of there until there actually is a lot of trust from the physician confidence side of things. It has to align with their thinking and their decisions. And a lot of the technologies that are built right now, they're built in a vacuum. Nobody speaks to a physician. Nobody speaks to what they want. Nobody speaks to, asking them their thoughts and opinions. And I'm not saying that, they're always 100% right. But, if you speak to 100 people and 95% of them are aligned, well, that's probably where you should be going and focusing on as well. And it's kind of verification and validation for them.
Right. And I realize that we're almost at time here. And so I just wanted to wrap up really quickly with a question on what steps can we take to educate physicians about AI, the limitations, the principles, and making them more comfortable with these technologies that will ultimately benefit their medical practice, like you were saying, in the long run.
Yeah, so explain what it is, and it's our responsibility to educate them. It's not their responsibility to find out about it. And we have to understand the physicians are set in their ways, and it's really hard to change them. So explain what it is, explain how it's trained, explain how it's been created, explain what this means to them. Is this decision support? Is this a workflow tool? Is this a visual aid? Explain it to them, and also explain that this is not replacing them. That's really important where we are right now. This is not a replacement, and bring them into the process. And sometimes that's including them, as part of publications or scientific advisory boards or your chief medical officer. Bring them along so that they can actually be your biggest champions.